Vienna, Austria, March 14th, 1985. In Stadtpark, a British diplomat walks past a bench, carrying a plain folder marked Ironside. But the real target is the man holding it. For 19 years, he fed NATO's secrets to the KGB and helped send at least 17 Western agents to their deaths behind the Iron Curtain. MI6 has spent 14 years chasing a leak across 12 countries. And tonight they're betting everything on one dead drop. Because if they miss this moment, Ironside vanishes, the executions continue, and Britain loses the Cold War from the inside. Operation Ironside. Ironside didn't look like a traitor. That was the problem. He was the kind of officer who made danger feel like paperwork. Calm voice, tidy suits, flawless routines. Born in Surrey in 1946, he grew up in the shadow of post-war anxiety, the child of civil servants who worshipped discretion. By age 22, he had joined MI6 not through romantic ambition, but through the most dangerous qualification: competence without charisma. Early in his career, he watched a Western operation implode in Berlin. The target was a Soviet signals officer ready to defect. The intelligence was solid. The extraction plan was textbook. But two rival MI6 desks wanted credit for the operation, so both leaked operational details to pressure the other into standing down. The KGB read the chatter, moved their man, and the defector disappeared into a labor camp. Ironside attended the post-mortem briefing where senior officers blamed the Soviets' brilliance, never mentioning the internal war that handed them the win. The lesson he absorbed wasn't, "The Soviets are unstoppable." It was worse. Your own side will burn you first. That cynicism became his gateway drug. When the KGB made contact in 1966 through a diplomatic reception in Brussels, they didn't offer just money. They offered control, proof that he could decide who lived and who got exposed. He didn't feel corrupted. He felt promoted. For the first time, someone valued his judgment more than his loyalty. By 1970, Ironside had moved from field operations to the Soviet desk at MI6 headquarters in London. His role was analytical synthesis, taking raw intelligence from 12 NATO countries and distilling it into threat assessments for ministers and military planners. He could summarize chaos into certainty. That made him invaluable. It also made him lethal. Because every document that crossed his desk, every agent report, every satellite photo analysis, every intercepted communication could be quietly copied, categorized, and passed to Moscow Center. Associates described him as methodical, never impulsive. He never drank heavily at office functions. He never complained about salary. He never displayed the bitterness that typically marks a turned officer. His tradecraft was invisible. He moved secrets through bureaucracy so smoothly that nobody noticed the theft, until bodies started appearing on the wrong side of borders. By 1979, MI6 knew they had a problem. Operations were failing at statistically impossible rates. A surveillance network in Warsaw collapsed within 48 hours of final approval. An asset in Moscow was arrested before his first meeting. A technical intercept operation in Prague was countered before equipment even reached the city. Each incident alone could be explained. Taken together, they suggested a pattern. Intelligence services had tracked the leak for 4 years without identifying a source. The problem wasn't lack of suspects. It was too many. Over 300 officers had access to various pieces of compromised intelligence. Allied services complicated the hunt. Was it an MI6 officer, a CIA liaison, a NATO staffer, a French analyst? Every failure meant finger-pointing across 4 languages and 6 intelligence cultures. MI6 called this the reflection strategy. The logic was straightforward. If you can't find the source, control what the source sees. Instead of hunting broadly, narrow the aperture until only one person could be responsible. This operation fit that doctrine perfectly because Ironside's position touched everything, but not everyone touched the same specific material. The obstacles were formidable. First, compartmentalization had failed. Too many desks accessed the same NATO reporting, so isolating one leaker meant engineering a controlled collapse of normal information sharing. Second, allied complexity meant leaks could be blamed on partners, and partners could blame MI6. The political pressure to avoid accusing a senior British officer was immense. Third, Ironside's tradecraft was nearly perfect. His document passes were timed around legitimate travel, routine meetings, and normal workflow. There was no suspicious pattern, only a statistical shadow. Despite these challenges, planners identified an opportunity in late 1983. The breakthrough came from a controlled experiment. MI6 created a canary trap document, a fabricated NATO threat assessment about Soviet missile deployments in East Germany. The document was real enough to be valuable, but false enough to track. It contained a unique formatting fingerprint, specific margin widths, font spacing, and pagination that could only be produced by one workstation inside the Joint Intelligence Liaison Unit at NATO headquarters in Brussels. The document was distributed to 17 officers. Within 6 weeks, Soviet countermeasures appeared that could only have been based on information in that specific file. MI6 cross-referenced travel logs, document access timestamps, and communication intercepts. 15 officers were cleared through various exclusions. 2 remained. One was a cipher clerk with no operational history and no financial irregularities. The other was Ironside. By November 1984, the authorization to proceed came from the Cabinet Secretary himself. The ESCO operation entered planning. Ironside had served British intelligence for 18 years and betrayed it for almost as long. The goal wasn't just arrest, it was certainty. They needed evidence that would survive courtroom scrutiny, Allied fury, and the inevitable Soviet propaganda claiming a frame-up. During the planning phase, something shifted inside the minds of the case officers. One surveillance lead later described it in a debriefing as mirror paranoia. He explained, "We were hunting a man who had hunted us. Every method we used to find him, he had used to protect himself. We started questioning our own team. Was the surveillance coordinator feeding him warnings? Was the technical officer sanitizing evidence? You reach a point where trust becomes impossible. And that's when the operation becomes clean. Nobody trusts anyone. Everyone watches everyone. It's the only way." The human cost was already visible before the trap even closed. At least 17 Western agents had been executed or imprisoned in operations Ironside had compromised. Families received vague notifications. "Regret to inform you. Operational circumstances. No remains recoverable." Behind each sterile phrase was a person who believed their intelligence service would protect them. Ironside had turned that trust into a transaction, trading human lives for the KGB's favor and approximately £1.2 million over 19 years. But there was something else in the intercepted communications. In February 1985, a routine signals intercept captured a conversation between Ironside and his wife. She asked if he regretted not taking the assignment in Hong Kong 10 years earlier. He said, "Every day." She asked why he stayed. He said, "Because leaving looks like running, and I'm not done yet." Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant. What they didn't write in the report was simpler. He sounded tired. Not guilty, just exhausted by the weight of his own deception. When the final arrest order was signed, one cabinet official asked the MI6 director, "Do we know why he did it?" The director answered, "Does it matter?" The official persisted, "For the trial, yes." The director's response entered classified record. "He did it because we gave him the access, the motive, and 14 years to perfect his method." Why he did it is a question for historians. We're here to stop him. By March 11th, 1985, all elements were in position. But first, one critical element needed to be resolved. Ironside had to believe the operation in Vienna was routine, not a trap. The infrastructure for Operation Ironside was built backward from the arrest. MI6 designed two covers simultaneously. Cover A positioned Ironside himself. He would travel to Vienna as a routine NATO liaison coordinator, rubber-stamped through normal diplomatic channels. The assignment was dull by design. A 3-day consultation on updated threat reporting protocols with Austrian and West German intelligence officers. The kind of bureaucratic obligation that looked legitimate because it was boring. Cover B deployed the surveillance and arrest teams. 12 MI6 officers entered Vienna across 4 days in early March as business travelers, municipal contractors, and low-level embassy staff. They rotated hotels to avoid pattern recognition, never stayed in the same district twice, and used cash for all transactions. 3 carried valid Austrian work permits. 2 had cover jobs at a British trade mission. 1 posed as a telecommunications consultant reviewing secure phone line installations at the British Embassy. The bait file was engineered with forensic precision. Designated as NATO Directive 774-B, it contained fabricated intelligence about Soviet troop rotations along the Czechoslovak border. The content was plausible enough to interest the KGB, but false enough that acting on it would reveal the source. The document was printed on a specific workstation at NATO headquarters using a Brother Aches 325 electronic typewriter. That model left microscopic impressions from its print wheel, unique striations measurable under forensic magnification. The document also contained a microdot marker, an invisible chemical compound embedded in the paper fibers that would fluoresce under ultraviolet light at 365 nanometers. The dead drop package itself was constructed for evidential clarity. A neutral brown folder, standard issue across European government offices. Inside, a removable inner sleeve held the NATO directive. A coded insert, a 3x5 card with a 12-digit reference number, would confirm receipt to Ironside's KGB handler. The beauty of the design was dual-purpose functionality. It looked routine to external observers, but every element was traceable in a laboratory. Team structure was compartmentalized to the point of paranoia. Case lead was a counterintelligence officer codenamed Shepard, running the trap and holding arrest authority. 2 watcher teams operated in concentric rings, a close shadow team of 4 officers maintaining visual contact within 30 meters, and a distant overwatch team of 3 officers positioned at strategic sight lines with telephoto surveillance cameras. Technical officer codenamed Lighthouse monitored all radio communications and held the forensic verification kit to confirm the bait's identifiers on site. Each operative knew only their immediate function. The close shadow team didn't know the arrest signal. The overwatch team didn't know which package contained the bait. Lighthouse didn't know the identity of Ironside until 18 hours before the operation. The operational security philosophy was surgical. Compartmentalization prevents betrayal, and everyone understood that the leak they were hunting could extend into the team hunting him. The surveillance clock was synchronized to the second using military-grade Omega Seamaster chronographs, standard issue for MI6 field operations. The arrest team rehearsed the non-lethal grab 43 times across 2 days in a shuttered warehouse outside Vienna. They mapped 2 clean exits from Stadtpark, one north toward parking and the British Embassy compound, one southeast toward Johannesgasse, where a backup vehicle waited with diplomatic plates. Total extraction time from grab to secure location, 87 seconds. The planning consumed 11 weeks. By March 13, 1985, all teams were in Vienna. Ironside arrived that afternoon on Lufthansa Flight 452 from Brussels. He cleared customs, checked into the Hotel Bristol under his diplomatic credentials, and attended a reception at the West German Embassy. Standard routine. No deviation. Shepard's team had 72 hours before the operation window closed. March 14th, 0830 hours. Ironside attended a morning briefing session at the Austrian Federal Ministry of the Interior, exactly as scheduled. Surveillance noted he carried a leather briefcase. Not unusual, but the weight distribution suggested documentation inside. He remained at the ministry until 13:15 hours, then returned to Hotel Bristol on foot. The walk took 19 minutes. He stopped twice, once at a newsstand to purchase the International Herald Tribune, once at a cafe for coffee. Neither stop lasted longer than 4 minutes. Over the next 6 hours, Ironside followed a pattern the surveillance team had seen before in East Berlin, in Prague, in Stockholm. He was preparing for a pass. The indicators were subtle, checking his watch twice in 5 minutes, adjusting his tie in a reflection, walking past the same tram stop 3 times without boarding. These weren't nervous habits. They were recognition signals, confirming to a watching handler that the operation was proceeding. By 16:45 hours, Ironside left Hotel Bristol again, this time carrying a plain folder under his arm. The folder was beige, unmarked, approximately 23 centimeters by 30 centimeters, standard document size. Shepard's team confirmed. That folder had not been in Ironside's possession during the morning session. It had been prepared in his hotel room between 13:30 and 16:30 hours. What Ironside didn't know was that his hotel room had been under technical surveillance since March 12th. MI6 had installed a fiber optic camera in the ventilation grate and a contact microphone against the shared wall with an adjacent room. They watched him photograph 3 NATO documents using a MI6 subminiature camera, 16 millimeters, capable of capturing full-page text in low light. They listened to him rehearse the dead drop procedure, timing his movements to the second. And they confirmed that the folder now under his arm contained NATO Directive 774-B. 18:07 hours. Ironside entered Stadtpark through the park ring entrance, not the shortest route from Hotel Bristol. That extra 200 meters was tradecraft, checking tails without checking tails. The park was lightly populated, a cold evening in early March, temperatures hovering at 4 degrees Celsius. Scattered joggers, a pair of dog walkers, a street musician near the Johann Strauss monument. Each one had been visually cleared by Overwatch. No known intelligence operatives. No pattern anomalies. Ironside walked slowly, hands in his coat pockets, folder tucked under his left arm. His route curved toward the central pond, then angled northeast toward a specific bench designated as Drop Site Sigma, intelligence jargon for a pre-surveyed dead drop location. The bench faced a stand of trees, providing visual cover from 2 directions. The geometry was classic, sight lines designed for counter-surveillance, not visibility. 100 meters behind, the close shadow team maintained loose contact. They moved in a staggered pattern, never in a line, never synchronized, always casual. One officer stopped to tie his shoe, another lit a cigarette, a third adjusted a camera like a tourist. The art of surveillance is invisible rhythm. You become part of the environment's natural motion. 1812 hours. Ironside reached the bench and paused. He adjusted his right glove, then repositioned the folder under his arm so it extended slightly behind his body, positioning it for transfer without visible handoff. The motion took 3 seconds. To a casual observer, it looked like a man settling into a seat. To Shepard's team, it was the pre-contact signal. 1813 hours. A second figure appeared on a crossing vector, approaching from the eastern path near the Cursalon building. Male, mid-40s, dark overcoat, no hat. He carried a folded newspaper in his left hand, the recognition item. His approach wasn't direct. He angled obliquely, as if heading toward the Johannesgasse exit. But his trajectory would intersect Ironside's bench within 12 meters. Lighthouse confirmed from overwatch position. The approach geometry matched KGB servicing patterns documented in 7 previous dead drops across 4 cities. The handler was moving into pickup position. 1814 hours. This was the critical moment. MI6 couldn't let the folder change hands. Possession by a Soviet handler would compromise the forensic chain of evidence. But they couldn't grab Ironside too early, or the case became circumstantial. They needed him in the act. Folder extended, handler reaching, intent undeniable. Shepard gave the signal. 2 officers dressed as Vienna city maintenance workers stepped into the sight line between Ironside and the approaching handler, creating a human wall. They carried a municipal survey kit, orange traffic cones, measuring tape, clipboards. Their presence was loud, invasive, operationally rude. The handler's approach faltered. He hesitated, calculated risk, then aborted, turning sharply, northwest, disappearing into the tree line. Ironside's calm shattered in that instant. He understood. The realization came not as panic, but as recognition. The trap had been sprung, and his method had failed. His method depended on silence, on clean, quiet exchanges in spaces designed for invisibility. When the environment became noisy, when his ritual broke, he had no contingency. A third officer, codenamed Anvil, moved in from behind. He approached at walking speed, not running, not aggressive, just inevitable. His right hand went to Ironside's left wrist, pinning the folder before it could move. His voice was calm, almost polite. "Simon, don't move. You're under arrest." Ironside didn't struggle. There was no chase, no heroic last stand. Just hands on wrists, folder secured, and 2 additional officers materializing from the background to form a mobile perimeter. Total time from signal to control, 11 seconds. Lighthouse moved in immediately with a forensic kit. Ultraviolet light confirmed the microdot marker in the paper fibers. Visual inspection confirmed the typewriter's striations. The folder contained NATO Directive 774-B, identical to the canary trap document seeded through Ironside's workstation 6 weeks earlier. The evidence chain was unbroken. 1815 hours, arrest complete. Shepard radioed the British Embassy. Package secure, en route. The arrest team moved Ironside northwest through parking toward a waiting embassy vehicle. He walked without resistance, silent, eyes forward. No statements, no denials, just compliance. The trap wasn't the park, the trap was certainty. And Ironside walked into it because he believed his method was invisible. For 19 years, he had moved secrets so smoothly that nobody saw the theft. But methods become patterns, and patterns become vulnerabilities. MI6 had studied him long enough to know exactly when he would move, where he would go, and how he would expect the exchange to unfold. By 1848 hours, Ironside was inside the British Embassy compound, secured in a diplomatic holding room. The folder, the NATO directive, and the MI6 camera recovered from his hotel room were catalogued as evidence. Shepard filed the initial arrest report via encrypted cable to London. The operation had succeeded without gunfire, without diplomatic incident, without the KGB escalating to rescue their asset. But success had a cost that wouldn't be calculated for months. By 2200 hours on March 14th, MI6 headquarters in London understood that Ironside had been arrested in Vienna with classified NATO documentation in his possession. The evidence was forensically solid. Microdot markers, typewriter striations, photographic documentation, eyewitness testimony from 8 officers. The legal case could survive any challenge. What they couldn't recover were the operations he had already destroyed. Within 48 hours, MI6 and allied services began the damage assessment. Every intelligence report Ironside had touched since 1966 was flagged for review. That meant 17,000 documents across 19 years. Berlin networks, Beirut reporting lines, Moscow station protocols, signals intercepts from Warsaw Pact exercises, all potentially compromised. The analytical team assigned to reconstruction worked in 12-hour shifts for 6 months, cross-referencing Ironside's access logs against known operational failures. The confirmed casualties numbered 17 Western agents executed or imprisoned. The real number was likely higher, but intelligence services don't publish complete losses. Some deaths were blamed on accidents. Some agents simply disappeared. The families received notifications stripped of operational detail. Regret to inform you that your husband has died in service to his country. No further information can be provided for national security reasons. Those sterile sentences concealed the truth. Their husbands had been sold. Officially, the British government issued a restrained statement on March 16th. An individual has been detained in connection with an ongoing internal security investigation. We will not comment further while inquiries continue. The Soviets maintained predictable denials. TSS released a statement calling the arrest a provocation designed to undermine détente. The denial was transparent to anyone in the intelligence field. But transparency wasn't the point. The Soviets needed deniability for diplomatic positioning, not truth. The strategic assessment split into 2 realities. Tactically, the operation achieved its objective. Ironside was removed, the leak was sealed, and the evidence would support prosecution under the Official Secrets Act. Intelligence gained during his debriefing included details of KGB recruitment methodology, dead drop protocols used across Western Europe, and the names of 3 Soviet handlers operating under diplomatic cover. Secondary benefits included forcing the KGB to assume compromise of any operation Ironside had touched, which created operational paralysis inside Moscow Center's Western Europe division for 8 months. But the cost was severe. Diplomatically, Allied confidence in MI6 took years to rebuild. NATO intelligence sharing protocols were tightened to the point of dysfunction. The Americans demanded oversight provisions. The Germans required independent verification of British source reporting. The French reduced liaison cooperation to ceremonial minimums. Trust, once fractured, doesn't repair on any timeline convenient to operations. Operationally, the Ironside case revealed a vulnerability that forced immediate adaptation. If one senior officer could compromise 19 years of intelligence work, then the architecture of secrecy itself was flawed. MI6 implemented stricter compartmentalization, access logs that tracked not just who saw documents, but when and for how long. Automated canary traps embedded in classified files. Polygraph requirements expanded from recruitment to periodic rescreening. Travel logs cross-referenced against unexplained financial deposits. The agency became a surveillance state watching itself. For the individuals involved, the consequences were permanent. Ironside was sentenced to 25 years in prison under the Official Secrets Act in a trial held partially in camera to protect ongoing operations. He served 19 years before being released on medical grounds in 2004. He died in 2007, unrepentant. In his only recorded interview, conducted by a journalist from The Guardian in 2005, he said, "I didn't betray my country. I recognized that my country had already betrayed the principles it claimed to defend. I just chose a different empire." The interviewer noted he showed no emotion when asked about the 17 dead agents. The officers who ran the operation faced their own reckonings. Shepard left MI6 in 1989, citing burnout. In a classified exit interview, he described the psychological toll. You spend years watching someone, learning their patterns, understanding how they think. By the end, you know them better than their own family does. And then you destroy them. That's the job. But it stays with you. He declined to elaborate. Anvil, the officer who physically arrested Ironside, continued in counterintelligence until retirement in 1997. In a 2012 interview for an internal MI6 training documentary, he reflected, "People ask if I felt satisfaction. I didn't. I felt relief that it was over. But the agents who died, they didn't get closure. Their families didn't get truth. We got a conviction. That's not the same thing." The KGB never acknowledged Ironside as their asset, even after the Soviet Union collapsed. His KGB file was reportedly destroyed during the chaos of 1991, along with thousands of other operational records. Whether that destruction was accidental or intentional remains classified speculation. The unintended consequences extended beyond personnel. Paranoia became institutional policy. Career tracks stalled for officers who had worked alongside Ironside, even those cleared by investigation. Partnerships tightened access to the point where Allied cooperation required layers of bureaucratic verification that slowed operations by weeks. The very openness that makes intelligence alliances effective, the willingness to share sensitive information quickly, was replaced by suspicion and compartment walls that persist today. The legacy of Operation Ironside fundamentally changed how Western intelligence services approach insider threats. Before Ironside, mole hunts were reactive. Spot leaks after damage, then investigate. After Ironside, the doctrine shifted to proactive engineering. Embed verification mechanisms before leaks occur. More canary traps. Stricter access, logging, behavioral monitoring, financial audits, polygraph expansions. The assumption of trust was replaced by the architecture of suspicion. But the deeper scar was cultural. MI6 had always operated on a principle that loyalty could be assumed among vetted officers. Ironside proved that assumption false. The result was an organization that excelled at watching external threats, but struggled to trust its own people. Recruitment became more cautious. Promotion required not just competence, but demonstrated ideological alignment. The creativity that makes intelligence work effective, the willingness to question assumptions, to think unconventionally, became suspect. One retired MI6 officer, speaking anonymously to a researcher in 2015, summarized the legacy. Ironside didn't just betray operations, he poisoned the well. After him, every mistake looked like sabotage. Every failed operation looked like a leak. We became an agency that trusted evidence more than people. Maybe that's necessary. But something was lost. Was Ironside a monster or a warning? From one perspective, The answer is obvious. He was an insider who traded 17 human lives for money and ideological satisfaction, then hid behind bureaucracy while agents died in interrogation cells and labor camps. He weaponized the trust his colleagues placed in him, turning institutional loyalty into a strategic vulnerability. He wasn't a whistleblower exposing corruption. He was a mercenary selling secrets to an authoritarian regime responsible for mass repression. From another perspective, he represents something more uncomfortable. A system that created the conditions for his betrayal, then blamed the betrayer to avoid examining its own failures. Ironside didn't hack into MI6. He was recruited, trained, promoted, and given access to the most sensitive intelligence in the Western Alliance. The system that enabled him for 19 years was the same system tasked with stopping him. His actions were criminal, but the structure that made his crimes possible was institutional. The moral question doesn't offer easy resolution. If catching a mole requires transforming your intelligence service into an internal surveillance apparatus, monitoring every officer, restricting information flow, treating colleagues as potential threats, where is the line between security and paranoia? Do you protect the mission by sacrificing the trust that makes effective intelligence work possible? Or do you accept that perfect security is impossible, and some leaks are the price of maintaining an organization capable of creative, aggressive operations? The answer reveals more about your worldview than about Ironside. If you believe security is paramount, then aggressive internal monitoring is justified by the lives it saves. If you believe institutional culture matters, then the cost of pervasive suspicion outweighs the benefit of catching rare traitors. What's your take on the trade-off? If you knew that preventing the next Ironside required every intelligence officer to work under constant surveillance, financial monitoring, communications intercepts, behavioral analysis, periodic interrogation, would you implement that system? Or would you accept that some betrayals are inevitable and the alternative is worse? Drop your perspective in the comments. And if this story made you reconsider what loyalty means when institutions fail the people who serve them, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to see it.